There's going to come a day the temple's going to be rebuilt. You can't do any of this without the red heifer because it's the key that unlocks the process. Well, Byron, it is great to be back with you, and this story that you're unfolding for us, this journey of your life and then the red heifers, man, we're so excited to hear all this. It's great to be back with you.
Bishop, I just want to tell you, thank you for having me. I think it's so important to share this. So I do hope all of your listeners will share it to all their friends. It's really, really good to be with you.
Now, listen, we could talk all day long on all this, but we got to get to these red heifers. All right.
Okay.
What the heifer is going on here? So, all right. So you're on this journey, you're taking pastors, you're doing all this, but how in the world did all of a sudden, what was the first moment where you said, what's going on with these cows? And what, what was the first moment that this whole thing started? Bring us to that moment.
So because I have so many good friends that are rabbis and they trust me, we've done projects together. There was a discussion going on on the Mount of Olives between some rabbis, and it's the Temple Mountain Institute and Rabbi Itzhak Mamo, who's with Bonei Israel, and a couple of other rabbis, and they were discussing, the Jewish people need this red heifer. It's been 2,200 years. This is how it comes back. To move forward, we need the red heifer. And one of them says, well, the biggest problem is we don't even have the land. And you got to have a place on the Mount of Olives, and it's all owned by the Arabs. And so Rabbi Itzhak Mamo says, well, no, that's not a problem because we purchased the land. We have the exact place. That's the right height, the right direction. We got the piece of land. Oh, you do? He said, no, the biggest problem is we don't have the priest. Because you got to have these young priests that have been kept away from death their whole life. They can't be born in a hospital because there's death there. They can't go to the cemetery. They got to be kept away from the ground level because you can step on a bone that represents death. I mean, they've got to be from the priest line, and they've got to be protected. That leaves them at a higher level of purity to be able to perform the ceremony. And so we don't have anything like that. And the Temple Mountain Institute says, no, as a matter of fact, we're preparing 5. We have them. You have them. Okay. Well, we need the hyssop, and we need the cedars of Lebanon, and we need these things. We have all of it. You have everything but the red cow. Yeah. So they can look at it carefully, and they say, well, okay, now it says, say unto Israel. And one of them, I think Rabbi Itzhak that I work says, I think maybe we could find them in Texas. And I got a friend over there named Byron could help hunt for them and see if we could find them. And they read the verse, and it says, say unto Israel, bring us a red heifer. Now, most of the church, when they read that, they just think of the nation of Israel sitting in the land. But when these rabbis look at it, they think of Israel dispersed into the nations at 720 BC. And they have not all come back. And they recognize that the Bible Belt of the United States has got to be where a lot of the tribes of Israel wound up. I'm talking about the DNA. God followed it, and he is with the Torah in their hearts. They've been collected to the churches in the Southwest because they love Israel, and they can't even explain why they love Israel so much. And he says, I've got a guy up there. I know he is part of Israel in my life. And so let's contact Byron and see if he would help put together a team and go hunt. Now, I want to tell you, Robert, a lot of people just take off and tell stories, and they've said I'm the farmer that raised the redhead. I didn't raise them. I do have a small farm. We do have some cows on it, but none of them are red. They're black. But what I am also, I own 2 businesses. I'm a businessman. I have technology people. I have people work for me. And so what I did was I brought together a team. I know it's always done by a team. It's not one person. And so we put together a team, and the team started going. We put out text messages. Well, first off, we scraped the internet. We found, and we did research on what would be the reddest cows, what we could find. And we did research on ranches. We put ads in magazines to ranchers. We put out text messages to them. And then we put hard mail in their mailboxes saying, we're looking for these perfect red cows. And through all of that, and then word of mouth to all of our friends, and through all of that, then the Lord wound up taking us. Eventually, we went places where the cows were close, but they didn't qualify. And the rabbis actually flew in, taught us, went to ranches, showed us what to look for. And so we started working real hard, and we were able eventually to find 2 ranches. We had some Santa Gertrudis cows that came from Urbanowski Ranch down by Houston. And then we had mainly red Angus that were raised on Triple Cross Ranch by Ty Davenport, a dear friend and a scholar in the Bible. And he started his ranch and purposely had the reddest of red cows because he loved the scripture of Numbers 19. So that started back in the 90s. He was breeding these cows so that he would have the reddest of red cows. And so when we get to his ranch, the thing is about it, you can't get to the cows after they're born because the ranchers will typically tag them in the first week. In the first week, the calf's easy to grab, put a tag in its ear, and then you got a hole in its ear, and it's no good for this ceremony. So you have to get to the cows before.
Wait, say that again, because that would be a blemish. That would be a blemish, that tag.
Yeah. So that's why.
So and they're normally tagged within a week, you say, of being born.
Yes.
All right. So now, I mean, the plot thickens. So now you're disrupting the whole process of the ranch and all that. Okay. All right, so
most of the ranchers,
keep going. So
most of the ranchers we talked to was like, get out of here. I make money with these cows. I'm not gonna mess with this,
Right. They're not going to go looking for the 5,000 head of cattle. They're not going to go around looking for one that's red that can't have one white hair, can't have one little speckle, right?
Not interested. It's funny. I love to ride my motorcycle in the country. When we were looking, I'm out with my motorcycle. I see a bunch of red cows. I park my motorcycle, run over next to the fence. I need to try to look under them as much as possible because it's the udders that usually have a little white spot, even though they look red. You got to. So anyway, it was funny how we all searched and hunted. But when we found Ty Davenport, he had tagged all his calves that were being born. Now, calves are born just like other animals are born in the spring and in the fall. This is typically when cows give birth. And so we were there in the fall of 22 and we're searching. Am I right? Yes, fall of 22. And it's in October. And I'd met Ty and all his calves were tagged. He said, if I'd just known a couple of weeks ago it didn't work, I would have kept some to the side. We could have looked at it. I said, well, how many head you got? 500 head. I said, if all of them give them birth? No, there'll be a few more born. I said, well, let's just pray. We're here in the field. We're looking for them. Let's just pray one gets born. And we have one. We went under a tree with Robert Moweri and his Ty's brother, Brian. And we just all prayed, Lord, if it's your will, give us a red calf. We're here to find the red heifer. Robert, we drove down through the brush less than a quarter mile. And there was the first one laying at his mother's feet right there. We celebrated, and there she was, a female. It could have been a male, but it was a female born right there. So we have the pictures and all the video of her. And so from there, though, the Lord went on overdrive. For some reason, his cows just gave birth to mainly heifers. And we wound up with 18 from his ranch. When I started off from the very beginning, they asked me to find one red heifer. And I thought, I'm from Texas. I believe I'll find 7 because that's God's perfect number. I'm going to hunt for 7. And so we went out to hunt for that. Well, in the end, he gave us 21, 3 times 7. And so we got them together. And then we called back to Israel and said, okay, we're ready for respected, honorable, top level rabbis to come over here quietly. We didn't tell anybody they were coming, and they knew what they were coming for. They came to inspect, and I got to drive around with the top. He'll probably be the next head rabbi over all of Israel. And I got to drive around with him and show him the calves down in Houston that we had, and then up to Ty's Ranch. And at Ty's Ranch, we actually brought quite a few media people in to film all of it. And the rabbi turned to me during the inspection. He said, "We got a big problem, Byron." I said, "What's the problem? I've got you all these cows. There's too many of them. I can't expect that many for perfection." I said, "Okay, well, let's just get 7 and pull them to the side. Make it 8 in case one of them's bad." And what happened? All 8 of them passed inspection that we pulled to the side. Then we started the process of trying to get them over to the land. That became a balagan. That was insane. There's an embargo. You're not allowed to ship livestock from the United States to Israel for livestock purposes. And for whatever reason, it's something agreed to. So we had to go through that, trying to figure out what to do there. We finally figured out that there is a part of the law says that you can import up to 5 pets. So we named them and we started petting them.
You named them. You named them and started petting them. This is amazing, folks. I mean, I want to tell you, miracles require partnership and hard work.
Yeah.
Miracles always require people partnering with God.
Yeah.
And people keeping at it and doing the details and doing the diligence and walking it out over time. So you adopted these 5 cows as pets.
Yeah.
And brought them to Israel. And of course, this is when this really started to blow up in the media. I mean, this is, all of a sudden, this was all over the media. 5 red heifers arrive in Israel. The rabbis are there at Ben Gurion Airport. The rabbis are weeping. I mean, this is this moment, right? That, I mean, I think, I mean, you're going back. If I have my facts correct, there have only been 9 sacrifices of red heifers in all of history.
Yeah.
So in 3,300 years, only 9 times has this happened.
Yeah.
And these times of purification, these times of rededication.
Yeah.
And even Maimonides looked and said, there's going to come a day where this will happen again. Maimonides is the main rabbinic thinker who frames all of this. And he said, listen, prophetically, this will happen again. And even in more modern times, Rav Kook, who was one of the very first rabbis as Israel is reforming. He was the chief rabbi of Jerusalem. He said, listen, there's going to come a day, the temple's going to be rebuilt, and we're going to see this happen. But all of this is based, you can't do any of this without the red heifer, because it's the key that unlocks the process. It's the first domino for all the other dominoes to come forth.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there, you get them through the red tape, you get them over to Israel. It starts to blow up in international media, and it starts to make huge waves in the Muslim world.
Yeah.
Because it seems that sometimes Muslims take prophecy more seriously than Christians even.
That's true.
And I mean, it goes all over we're talking Al Jazeera, we're talking mainstream Muslim news outlets begin to pick up this story, and you find yourself in the midst of a whole reality here that I think is something far greater than you could have imagined. So walk us through this last, whatever it is. How long has it been now? 12 months? When did they get to Israel?
So we got them there September the 13th of 22. That's when they got to the land. Okay. So we actually found them in the fall of 21. I said that wrong earlier. I apologize. But in 22, we got them to the land. And then that's where they were maturing. They have to be in their third year. You know, when you're born, you're in your first year. When you turn 1, the next day you're in your second year.
Right.
They had to be 2, and then there has to be this huge discussion about fence laws. Everything the Jewish people do, the rabbis have to come to consensus on what the fence law is. They hadn't done this in 2,200 years. So the consensus finally, there were some that said, yes.
I'm sorry, Byron. Did you say fence law? What
Yeah,
law?
like there's a buffer zone. Like for instance, you know, Shabbat starts when you can see the third star in the evening sky. That's when Shabbat starts, but it doesn't start then because there's a fence law or a buffer zone of 2 hours before that to make sure you don't accidentally start 1 minute late. And then there's a fence law on the other side to make sure you don't stop too early. So it's 2 hours on the other side. So everything they do, and this is why kosher laws are so strict. And anyway, it's those fence laws. So they came up with the ruling, the decision between all the rabbis, and there was over 300 rabbis inspecting and looking at these cows once we got them to Israel and discussing all of this from every city in Israel. And they came up, some of them said, well, 1 month is plenty. So starting in the third year and 1 month. And then the others said, no, it needs to be 6 months. And they finally said, okay, 1 year and 3 months. That's when we can say it for sure is ready. As long as it's still all red, they could be used. So that happened in February of 24. That happened just a few months ago, February this year, when they became old enough in their third year and 3 months old. So all that led to the excitement of what was going on. But now that was, you know, anyway, that's how we got to where we are on all that.
Folks, I don't know about you, but my mind is being blown. I just cannot even wrap my brain around all of this. The Bible, the stories of the Bible coming to life in front of our eyes. I want you to share this with a friend, share it with your pastor, and then stay tuned for part 3 as we get into deeper this amazing story of the journey of the red heifer.